Thank you for tuning in. This is DJ Fob Fresh from SegaShiro.com, the Sega resource, and today we're looking at Jambo Safari on the Nintendo Wii. Now, Jambo Safari actually originally began life back in 1999, and this was in the arcade on the Naomi arcade board, which essentially was the arcade version of the Sega Dreamcast. It never did make it to the Dreamcast console, so it's great to see the game finally come to a home console now. And originally in the arcade, the game used a steering wheel, a gear shift, and people pursued the animals in sort of a Jeep cabinet and caught them with a lasso. And so that sort of initial gameplay idea has come over to the Wii, rather fittingly, with great Wii controls. Now, I'm going to do a bit of an aside here. Now, this is a game that is marketed towards children. However, I actually found it quite enjoyable. Maybe that says something about my own maturity level, but when I was repping for a video game company, and I was out in stores, one question I got asked a lot was there a game that was A, fun and enjoyable, B, could work for someone who was over 10, and for a younger brother or sister that was in that 3 to 5 range, and at the same time was a little bit educational. And the one thing that Jambo Safari is it's one of the few games that I know, and I've personally played, that manages to hit all those three. Now, as you can see from the screens up above, you're not just roping and doping the animals, you're actually taking care of them. And when you take care of animals and catch them, you get info cards that are unlocked, and you learn a little bit about the animals. Now, granted, this isn't the same as watching a National Geographic documentary, but it takes a step forward that a lot of other little video games don't do. Now, being a game targeted towards families, there is a party mode. There are mini games such as stone skipping, ostrich racing, Jambo, which is playing soccer using the trucks, and of course, Meerkat Madness, which is a sort of cheap version of Choo Choo Rocket. Now, I particularly didn't find any of these party games that fun or enjoyable. That's not to say that you wouldn't, but they were definitely not the highlight of this package for me. Where multiplayer really shined for me was in the co-op mode through the regular game. Now, sort of with two sets of controllers, you both log in, one person drives, and the other person can rope and dope the animals. Now, that is pretty cool, especially in this game where there's enough content in there to keep a person that's older interested and busy, sort of with things that you can unlock. Sort of the general gameplay feels like a good mix of like Crazy Taxi, Sega Bass Fishing, and sort of the open environment reminded me of a lighthearted version of Smuggler's Run, if you remember that game. Now, the old school Dreamcast Naomi DNA of this title kind of makes for an interesting contrast in the game. In one sense, it's almost not Nintendo Wii enough, in the sense that it doesn't have Mii support, which is strange for a children's game. On the other hand, it sort of carries that arcade legacy with it, and that's what makes it enjoyable for an older audience. You know, one issue that you could have with this game, especially if you were playing it with someone sort of 3 to 5, is that there's only 4 characters to choose from. They're all pretty stereotypical type characters. On another level, when you start unlocking sort of costumes for the female rangers, you can get mini skirts and halter tops, which don't really fit the children's audience, but at the same time could sort of carry that arcade legacy. Now, there are some other issues with this game. There are some extraordinarily long load times in it, and I don't really think children are all that patient. Again, the physics can be kind of wonky at times. There were an occasional glitch, and I think once or twice the game crashed on me during play, but overall, the sort of core arcade mechanic and the core gameplay was incredibly enjoyable. And sort of the missions mixed it up enough that you could, work on saving the animals. You could name all the animals, which was interesting enough, and then find them again later. And I really liked that Ranger Park element in the game, and it kind of made up for some of the rather glitchy qualities in it. From a graphic perspective, it does hold its own. It carries sort of a bit of that Dreamcast Naomi legacy. The graphics are pretty enough that they'll keep you interested in the game. All the design elements are solid, just nothing to write home about. One place where this game does excel is in gameplay hours. You could literally pump dozens of hours into this game, especially if you love the core mechanic, because there's an arcade mode where you're just sort of running around catching animals, and I kind of got hooked on that. As I see it, there are two main audiences for this title, sort of the Dreamcast hardcore that want that quirky sort of Sega classic feel, game has that, and parents that want a game with their children.